Greetings everyone! Today I will review a cheap Chinese LED fixture from AliExpress. It is sold by Yiflamefly and UKing for around 30 euros, which is also what I paid. They promise 40 watts of light output with RGBW color mixing and many other good things, as we will see later. This is probably the first fixture which I can wholeheartedly endorse. But first, I need to warn you, this is a technical review from the point of view of an engineer, so be prepared for some graphs and tables. Let's get right in. Let's quickly go over what the seller of this fixture claims. The centerpiece of the fixture is the 40 watt RGBW LED with a beam angle of a narrow 4 degrees, a color rendering index of over 90 and a light flux of 3400 lumen. Rated is the fixture for 60 watt. The beam effect is being supported by a round SMD LED ring around the central lens, on which there are 24 small LEDs that are even individually addressable, albeit not via DMX. The fixture also claims to support RDM and to have a linear dimming curve from dark to bright. The internals are as follows. First, there is a power supply board. This outputs roughly 23.9 volts and puts them into the dimmer board. The dimmer then takes this voltage and sends the power to the LEDs. The LED is mounted on a custom-made aluminum PCB with an attached heatsink. The dimmer also sends power to the case fan that blows on the heatsink. The case is great. The main tube is extruded powder-coated aluminum of standard quality. This is what you would expect after seeing many cheap Chinese fixtures. On the back is a steel backplate, and the front has a plastic cover around the PMMA lens. The U-bracket is with 1.7 millimeters, a bit on the thin side, but still okay. On the back is a PowerCon input, but unfortunately no pass-through. One can criticize two things. First, that the screws for the backplate are slightly misaligned, which is unfavorable, and a pedantic person like me would ask why they did not make the brims or bars or however you want to call it symmetrically. Like there are 8 on every side except for one. And this one has 9. And then they screwed up the printing on the backplate, which leads to the side from the backplate that has 9 and the side of the fixture case that has 9 being misaligned. Yeah, but this is all just nagging. It's a perfectly adequate case, only to be topped by the 4x10 watt UR mini par. The unit uses a 60mm fan to cool the LED. The fan is temperature controlled, but the interesting thing is that the temperature element is not on the heatsink, but rather somewhere on the dimmer board. You will later learn that you can change the dimmer curve manually, or at least to some extent. Generally speaking, the fan is off for most of the time. The LED is cooled sufficiently by the shallow heatsink, which is directly beneath the LED PCB, and on which the fan blows. A completely fine cooling solution for 40 watts of LED power. In the compliance chapter, we can welcome a rare guest. There is not only a CE certification correctly printed on the fixture, but the fixture is also earthed with a dedicated screw. But the neat thing is that the fixture is the first one to feature an eyelet for a safe tie. That is great. It is technically speaking not necessary for hanging fixtures over a crowd, since you can have 2 U-brackets, but it is definitely way better. This is a huge plus in that regard. Before going into the details of the measurement, I want to prepend a small subjective evaluation. The LED is really bright. On the right, you can see a photo where the 60 watt just blows the 10 watt mini spot from last time out of the water. It is not even a competition. The dimming curve is surprisingly good. It is not perfect, but perfectly adequate, even for more problematic theater applications. At least as long as it is not the only shining light that everyone pays attention to. No one will notice the slight brightness jumps when fading. Great in that regard. The light is not a sharp spot, it is more a narrow beam. It is clear that the one lens works as hard as possible to keep the light in a beam, and it succeeds mostly, but this means that the brightness is not uniform. But I also don't find that a sharp spot is a thing a pinspot must achieve. That is just personal taste, really. There is some color fringing for the beam if you look on the shadows that the fixture produces. However, this is not that big of a problem, since you won't see the color fringing in the beam itself and on the place you illuminate. You will only see it in the shadows, and that is okay in my opinion. There are a few artifact light circles, but they are so dim that you won't notice them if you are not actively looking for them. The last thing is that I unfortunately can't quantify at the moment is the light quality. They claim a RA of more than 90, and just from looking at it, I would agree. It is a quite pleasant white that is also not too cold, and I would guess it should have a pleasant 5,000 to 6,000 Kelvin. But still, I can't measure it. The LED ring on the front is a nice gimmick. It is only interesting if the fixture faces the audience and people look at the fixture. The LEDs are spaced apart so far that you will see the spaces between them, and in the automatic programs, the LEDs get addressed individually, but you can't do that via DMX. I will not talk about them any further except for the controlling and the final chapter. I proceeded to measure the brightness and the beam angle of the unit. I did that with the brightness sensor of a Samsung Galaxy S20 FE, so not the most accurate thing, but it should be fine for relative comparisons. This leads us to a maximum brightness of around almost 20,000 lux, which is 40 times of what the 10 watt has. This fixture has a beam angle of 2.5 degrees for 1/2 and 4 degrees for 1/10. Just as a comparison, for my Stairwell Pixel Beam 160, I measured 45,000 lux at the very center of the 4 degree or 7 degree beam. The Shed's 18 x 12 watt metal case power has 5,000 lux in the center, but a way wider spread over 10 and 20 degrees respectively. So, it is really bright and is highly focused. They advertise the power of the LED being 40 watt. That should be true with my measurements telling me an LED power of a bit more than 40 watt. But here comes a disclaimer. The manufacturer drives the LED with a constant current. Without going into detail, I need to say that I made my life a bit easier by skipping my own lab bench power supply and straight up extrapolating the oscilloscope measurements of voltage and current to a duty cycle of 100%. This made my life immensely easier, since the power I measured is what they claim, and also what I would have suspected based on the brightness. It can't be off too far, but don't read too much into the 0.94 or whatever. And also the wattage rating of any LED is not terribly fixed anyway. So again, just to finish off, the LED is as advertised. With that out of the way, let's get to the dimmer board measurements. I have explained my methodology in more detail in my review of the 7x18 watt RGBW amber UV sheds power, but here's the TLDR. The dimming works via PWM, which is the standard way of dimming LEDs. The voltage looks like the picture on the top, and from that we can get the PWM duty cycle and the maximum voltage during on. The switching frequency is also measured here. For the dimmer board, it is 3 kHz, which is quite fast and definitely done in a way that there is no visible flickering, even for cameras. I measured the on current the LEDs get during the pulse. At some point, I will have to make a screenshot of the current during on for a CC-driven LED because it looks, quite a bit different. Anyway, I also measured the voltage applied to reach that current. These are the most important data points I got with this method. The peak voltage differs quite much for the different colors, which gives it away that this is a constant current driven fixture. The maximum duty cycle is minimally different, but hovers around 50%. On the right of the table there is the current during the pulse and the corresponding power per color. Then, on the right, is the total power as supplied by the dimmer board. The total LED power is 21.8 watt. This is lower than the advertised 40 watt. But if we are precise here, since I'm into that, they did not really claim that the LED is driven with 40 watt, nor did they claim that the power rating is actually reached. But the intention is clear. They are not honest in the power rating. Why am I not mad about this, you may ask? Well, you will learn in a second. Now to the strobe behavior. I'm only testing the strobe with the menu on the power itself, not with DMX. But the menu lets us set the strobe between 0 and 255, so it should be identical anyway. This is the one thing this fixture really fails miserably at. Strobe is a flash of light in between of pauses with decreasing length. This fixture has a fixed pulse to pause ratio of 1, meaning the pulse is exactly as long as the pause. This is not how strobes work. In German, I would say setzen 6, literally translatable with sit down, you got a 6. It's similar to what a teacher can say to a student that was standing and performed so badly he fails completely and gets the worst grade, a 6. Just sit down, you failed. And with that single stain on the white vest of our fixture, we go to the DMX control. There are 2 channel modes, 7 and 11. The fixture works with both of them, and the manual from the package provides a DMX description for what which channel does. I was not able to test the claimed RDM since I don't have the equipment nor the know-how of how to test that. Please give me ideas of how to do it if you know so. Last, I will say it again, LED from the ring, unfortunately not individually addressable via DMX. You can only set solid colors. But still, it's useful to be able to do so. There is a sound to light function. It is more useful than that of other fixtures since you have more modes available and you can change the sensitivity via the secret menu, which we'll now talk about. Thanks to the person from Reddit who gave me the idea, I tested if this fixture has a secret menu, and it has one. You get there by pressing the menu button for 3 seconds. In the secret menu, you can set the maximum brightness the pinspot reaches when setting the DMX value to 255. Effectively, this is an upper limit of sorts. Secret value number of 255 means that at a DMX value of 255, the duty cycle of the according color is 100%. When it is not 255, the fixture takes the secret menu number, for the sake of argument being a 16, and distributes it over the 265 DMX values, including 0, you want to give to the power via DMX. This would mean that the LEDs are off for the DMX values of 0 to 15, on the lowest duty cycle for 16 to 31, and so on. From the factory, the values for the individual colors are as shown on the table. 120, 130, 140, and 130. Coincidentally, that fitted to the duty cycle that I measured before, so my measurement makes sense. Then there are the FT and PT values. FT sets the lower fan temperature above which the fan starts spinning. PT should set the temperature at which the fan reaches its maximum speed. Irritatingly, I did not see that the fan slowed down after the temperature fell back down. But I don't know if this is a fail on me or if it's an actually weird behavior by the fixture. P sets somehow a max power. If I'm not mistaken, if the P value is at 50% of its maximum value, the duty cycle for the color is always halved. If P was 50% of 255 and the secret menu number of G, so green, would be 255, at a DMX value of 255, we would have 50% duty cycle. I guess this sets a resolution on the DMX dimmer channel, and internally this channel is always at 100% if not set by a DMX value. SE then sets the sound sensitivity, but it's not only setting a threshold value, but rather really the sensitivity to the power of the music, or something like that. I don't really know and was not able to really get behind what this number actually changes, but saying it is the sound sensitivity is definitely not far off. And as a last little piece of information I got for you, the inductor on the right is getting quite toasty. Just a thing I found out. I don't know what you want to do with that information, but if you overclock the fixture, you might want to keep an eye on that inductor. Then let's proceed to the detailed look at the power supply. According to the sticker on the side, it should have 60 watts at 24 volts. And the printing on the inductor also tells us the same. So it's all clear in that regard. On the left is a potentiometer, which should change the output voltage, but I did not test that since the controller is doing CC anyway. The unit switched off when pulling 100 watt, with my electronic load. In some sense, this is also a short circuit protection. There is not really a mains voltage isolation gap. According to my testing, the power supply is definitely 110 to 240 volts AC compatible, since the power supply had no problem of supplying the full-on LED with a lower voltage at 50 Hz. There is a 3.15 amp input fuse. During idle, the power supply pulls 1 watt, and with the LED full on, it pulls 31 watts from the wall. The power supply is sized for the 40 watt LED, and it would be able to supply this LED in every situation. Why then is this LED not driven as high as advertised, you may ask? I really don't know. The only real measurement I can do is an efficiency measurement. I measured the power drawn from the wall at different power levels. Importantly, my mains power meter is not precise at low power levels, but for example at 70 watts, this is negligible, in my opinion. In the end, the efficiency stays at around 74%. All in all, I would trust this power supply. But again, I'm no electrical engineer, and thus I cannot actually evaluate whether or not this is a safe power supply. Now to my favorite chapter, the modification options one could do. And the quality of the fixture is so high that I actually only can think of really two things that are a problem. The light rings and the lower power than advertised. The first is not such a big problem, but if you have an application where it is mission critical to avoid these rings, you can 3D print or cut from a flat sheet a tube and put it in front of the fixture to block them. Regarding the power, we established that the LED is capable of significantly more than it is driven at. And we know that the power supply can deliver that too. So I overclocked the fixture in the secret menu to get it to full 40 watts of power, which then results in roughly 55 watts of power drawn from the wall. This is easily done. The ease of this modification is the only reason why I did not blame the fixture for under-delivery in the dimmer board section. However, I want to tell you, the increase in brightness you perceive is marginal when overclocking the fixture. This has something to do with how our eyes perceive brightness, which is not linear. Physically speaking, the power increases drastically and the brightness is 30,000 lux in the very center, so 30% more light output for 50% more power. I can only guess that it was the manufacturer's aversion to pulling unnecessary power that prevented them from running the LED at 40 watt. By the way, keep the toasty inductor in the back of your head and make sure not to damage anything due to overheating. I'm not responsible for what you do with your fixture. If one LED fails, the fixture is dead. But the one LED can be replaced with a bit of skill. Since the whole unit is fully screw-based and does not use glue, it is quite easy to disassemble with only a minor problem laying in the misaligning screw holes on the back. There is a good amount of space in the unit, which makes repairs easy, but the problem is that the cables are a bit on the short side, so it is a bit of a hassle to work with it while it's not fully disassembled. And with that, we get to the wrap-up and the price evaluation. The power works, which is always nice. It is very bright and a very narrow beam. The LED is as advertised and CC driven. It even has a CE certification and a safe eyelet. I believe that this fixture doesn't pose a fire and health hazard. The power supply is solidly built and of good efficiency. Lastly, there is a good thermal solution, and the fan is temperature controlled, albeit not perfectly. And last but not least, power supply and cooling solutions are oversized so that there is enough headroom for any eventualities. On the bad side are minor inconveniences, like the screws that are not aligned, that the U-bracket could be thicker, and that the base power is not as advertised. All not too bad. The beam throws discolored shadows, which is design related and to some extent not fully avoidable. The worst thing is that the strobe behavior is wrong. Lastly, the inductor besides the output gets warm, but I don't know if this is a problem. I just wanted to add it here. And all this you will get for 30 to 40 euros. In the comparison chapter, we meet our old friend, the 10/30 watt LED pinspot from many companies. And I will just say this. If you buy the small one, it is your own fault. The 60 watt pinspot is in so many ways better than this one. It is not even a fair comparison. One is a toy, and the other one, the one I'm testing today, is a serious pinspot. With this pinspot being the first Chinese par that I'm actually impressed by, I will present you with the two most likely applications. Option 1 is to light a disco ball. I normally don't have and don't use disco balls, but I was at the wedding of a couple of friends just a few days after I got the fixture. And while I was not responsible for lighting, but I just took the pinspot with me just in case. They had a disco ball in the venue and there was a bit of dancing at the end. I installed the fixture and pointed it to the disco ball, and it blew the one from the venue out of the water. Granted, it wasn't that hard since it was such a minuscule pinspot, since it was such a minuscule light, but still, a very good impression. And the second application is installing multiple ones at a back truss and throwing beams either on stage, in the audience, or over them. I was not able to test that, mainly due to the aversion for haze in one church I work for, and additionally, with a single unit, it is a bit lame. But since I'm so impressed by this fixture, this may very well change soon. So, as a few final words, I want to say that there are many first times in life. This is such a first for me. It is the first time an AliExpress fixture impressed me. The 7x18 watt RGBW amber UVs are nice and all, but I needed to modify them heavily. The 4x10 watt is locked down and can be had from a reputable source. The 4x10 watt is locked down and can be had from a reputable seller, but this fixture, it's just great. It works just great. You just have to avoid strobes, but this is really not too bad. For the moment being, the only thing left for me to do is to thank you for your attention, and may your path be illuminated by a bright but not burning Chinese LED par. And goodbye.